Welcome to the Tachyon Pulse, your place for sci-fi, debate, rumour and news. And once again, a new Star Trek Strange New Worlds episode has dropped. Once again, it's a comedy. Once again, it's not really Star Trek. But actually, I quite like the episode. I just struggle with what it means and stands for. I'll explain that in a minute. Let's get into it.
Our tachyon pulse has been unable to completely penetrate the anomaly.
There will be spoilers ahead. The Vulcan episode dropped. The episode we had teased months ago, where the command crew, Chapel, La'an, Uhura and Pike get turned into Vulcans. I've made notes. Great big bits of this episode make absolutely no sense from a sci-fi point of view. But I am going to say it was quite funny. If you just pretend it's not Star Trek, and trying to ignore the annoying Vulcan acting, then it was actually quite a good episode. There's actually some genuinely funny bits in the series. There's actually some genuinely funny bits in this. I actually really like Pike at the end when Captain Patel gets a promotion and he goes, "Am I less in trouble?" I genuinely laughed out loud at that. I thought it was very funny. But, right, when they take the serum that turns them into Vulcans, why does that change Pike's hair? Tidied it. No idea why. And his hair is getting... they even commented on his hair in one moment in the episode, which again I thought was quite funny. But, it got bigger and tidier. I have no idea why that would happen. The other thing is, they mentioned that it was like the perceived experiences of Spock and why they're actually then logical, remembering that this is a learned thing for Vulcans, because they feel so intently. They have to learn how to be logical. So, yeah, that was just one of those little science fudges that Strange New Worlds likes to throw in to explain things. I didn't love it. The way they all walk and talk, particularly Pike, to be honest, is annoying. I actually thought he walked around like the Thunderbirds, and he talked more nasally for some reason. And at one point, he's talking to the Doctor, and he gets like right in his face, sort of thing. I don't know when Vulcans did that. They comment repeatedly on how the Vulcans are complete dicks, and to be honest, they are. I've never seen Vulcans to this extreme, being knobheads. It was annoying, let's put it that way. There's a lot of coincidences in this episode. For one, the Farragut was nearby getting repaired, so Kirk turned up. To be fair, to see his brother. Didn't phone ahead to see if his brother was even there, because he wasn't. So he actually spends the day with Scotty, which actually was quite nice. They sort of started that relationship thing, and, Kirk is doing that repeatedly in this series, that he has a little episode where he was, bonds with Scotty this time. He bonded with Spock. He's bonded with La'an. La'an's really pretty as a Vulcan, by the way. Just is. She's very pretty anyway. But yeah, the Farragut was nearby. So, yay. Another coincidence, just the Vulcan they needed to fix all this with the, it's not a chakra, but it's the Vulcan version, was also nearby, and number one used to date him. And when she is around Patton Oswalt as a Vulcan, she becomes very loose with her morals, let's say. Unless he is like some sort of psychic or something. She just goes from very buttoned up, very professional to happy, let's say. I don't quite know why they did that. One thing in this season of Star Trek as well that started to annoy me a little bit is they started a really interesting storyline with Ortega, with her PTSD following the first double episode, the end of season 2 and end of start of season 3. I found that really interesting, and I hope they would go somewhere with that. We saw it a little bit when she basically commandeered the ship and disobeyed orders, and then she just seems to have got better. I just think that's a wasted opportunity. Ortega is one of my favourite characters. I adore her. But it was really a wasted opportunity to explore that a little bit further. Ortega, again, in this episode, because her brother gets mind-melded and stuff, is just glorious again. But it's a shame they didn't bother with that. La'an, not just very pretty in this. I actually thought she was quite interested in that I thought had made her a Romulan. So I thought that was really interesting because obviously the Vulcans and the Romulans are related. So that would make sense. They even mention, I think, the Romulans at one point when La'an and Pike are talking about it. But then it turns out at the end, not a Romulan. It's because she's related to Khan. So that's why she's becoming aggressive, manipulative, and basically wants to take over the galaxy and start a war with, like, everybody. I thought that was, again, a bit of a wasted opportunity. Why don't you just make her a Romulan? That would have been actually quite clever and a bit of fun. But they didn't. They chose not to do that, even though they sort of made out they were. Refusing the serum was actually logical and kind of made sense. So they thought, well, we're better than that now, so we don't need to take it. So then they had the sort of moral dilemma. Do we force them to do it, or do we just, basically try to talk them into it? This whole moral dilemma sort of reminded me of Tuvix a little bit, where Tuvok and Neelix merged in Voyager and Janeway murdered him. They decided to go a different way in this, but it just twigged that memory in my mind. Captain Pike is a knob in this, but also he just thinks something that's not logical in the slightest, where he decides to do 40-minute shift rotations. Even if that was good for Vulcans, it makes no sense for humans. So that was not logical. It was just expressing that he's a bit of a knobhead as a Vulcan. They do that a lot in this. They basically really lean into the fact that Vulcans are very abrupt and, quite unpleasant to be around. And, they actually... we kind of see that actually in a couple of the Star Trek movies where Spock is basically shunned and bullied for being half human, and they are unpleasant. But the only time I really remember seeing that is in the 2009 Star Trek. I think it was sort of hinted at in other Star Trek, but that was the one we saw it directly. When there's the young Spock and they basically beats up a couple of Vulcans because they take the piss out of him. Again, they leaned into that a little bit in this episode, but I don't know. Doug. He's obviously the Vulcan that happened to be local, so he was able to save the day. Two things with that. I thought the character, even though I love Patton Oswalt, I think Patton Oswalt's brilliant and everything, I thought the character was odd. He was very coincidental that he fit the situation beautifully, but as a Vulcan, very interested in humanity, and obviously I've already said about the number one thing, but yeah. A couple of things I did like in this. Dolphins and engineering. At first time I saw it and just thought, oh, engineering's got a pond. That's a bit weird. And then obviously you see the dolphin underneath. I like that. I like that they've remembered to add them to it, and I've got the whole stellar cartography thing. The dolphin's good for directions. So I like that they put it in. I would argue, I'm not sure it's a good idea to put it quite that close to engineering. Engineering tends to have issues, and I'm not sure that much water near engineering is probably a good idea either. But they remembered to put it in, so I quite like that. It was funny. The other thing with Doug, though, going back to that, is the whole thing where they just changed three of them back, Pike and that, very quick. It just literally went, Doug fixed it, done, move on. And then they had to fix La'an because she was currently refusing at that point. And Spock and La'an did a fight dance, which reminded me very much of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, actually. La'an, though, the actress that plays La'an, is a brilliant dancer. She is so good. And, she was able to really put those skills into her fight skills because those were actually also excellent. It kind of reminded me of a River from Firefly in the Serenity movie when she has that big fight scene. So I remember an interview with her later. She says, well, actually, I am a dancer. So when I then needed to do the fight scenes, I was able to really take those skills and use them. And she did those beautiful fight sequences. It kind of reminded me of that. She is very, very good. So what do I think of this episode as a whole? It's another bloody comedy. When are we going to have any Star Trek in this Star Trek series? You know, they keep talking about wanting to do a sort of a work-based comedy. Tawny Newsome is going to be writing it, if Paramount ever let them do it. They don't need to. We've already got a Star Trek comedy. It's called Series 3 of Strange New Worlds. I'm actually getting to the point where now, even though I liked this episode on the whole, I actually thought it was a funny episode, it's starting to piss me off. How many Star Trek episodes have we had up to this point? 2? And the rest have been some sort of quirky, comedy, whatever episode. And it's starting to really wind me up. I would like some Star Trek, please. Now, look, I mentioned there's a couple of weird mistakes and real fudges of the science in this, and to be honest, I was reminded that there's lots of that through Star Trek history, particularly in the movies and stuff where canon and the science stuff gets confused. But I would say, maybe not for the movies, but the series at least, we had 24 episodes, so I kind of accepted that there'd be some mistakes. Not when there was only 10 episodes. I think they should be better with the detail, but what do you think? Get into the comments. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. It really helps us out and you'll never miss any of our new videos. Also, you can become a member of the channel and get to see a lot of these videos before everybody else. Go check that out. As always, please stay safe and I'll see you next time.
Our tachyon pulse has been unable to completely penetrate the anomaly.